Hey again, it's your friendly neighborhood pruner here. I finished the job and I'm going to give you a little bit of a walkthrough. Um, this is what the tree looks like now. Um, Hopefully there's oohing and ahhing aplenty. I went pretty heavily on this. I think I've been sort of looking at it for a long time and thinking about where I'd make my cuts. This is all the stuff that I took out of it. So it's definitely a quarter, if not a third, of the above ground biomass. This is also connected to right adjacent to a laundry to landscape gray water system, and so I know it's going to have a lot of easier for it to bounce back than potentially trees in other situations. But you can see that I took out that big, large thing there in the this big huge branch there, opened up the middle of that, which resolved a ton of issues just on its own. And then up near the crown, I took a lot of these other middle branches out. And a lot of times the trees they'll kind of grow in branches of 3. We'll usually take the middle one out to spread the energy more efficiently or more equitably throughout the tree. For instance, here on this cut, this branch was coming all the way out to the middle here, and so I took this back, not all the way, but back to these little buds. You don't have to make every cut every year, especially if you want to preserve fruit production. Apples will usually be sort of spur bearing, so there's a good chance that this is going to be fruit. So I might eventually want to take this entire branch out, but if I leave it for now, I might get some fruit this year and then take it out a year or 2 from now. So you can kind of balance some of those things. And this was that paralleling section. So see, I've kind of left the top one so that it's more of that 45-degree angle. I think that eventually this branch might not be so good, especially if it starts to bend more down. But I want to be careful about that. Over time you can do fun things like this branch here is clearly, you can see this bend. It's had fruit before probably and been weighted down, maybe with snow, but maybe with fruit. So you can actually do that intentionally and have these big branches that are actually curved over time. Let's see here. I was trying to make cuts that go in the direction of the flow. So you see there's kind of an angled cut. Oh, it's not focusing. So instead of doing like a square cut at the end here, I want to do it at an angle so that it goes with the curve of where the branch might go from there. You're not always going to get it perfect, but you want to avoid the sort of square things, because then you have all these sort of right angles in the middle of your tree, and it's harder for the tree to heal over that. Likewise, I think I'm looking at preferencing certain buds. So on this one, let's see if this will show up. There's a bud here at the end, and they come up on different parts of the sides of the branch, right? So you can make a cut right above one that's pointing in a direction that you want the branch to go, because I want this branch to keep going out that way. I don't want it to grow that way. I don't want it to grow a new branch that way. So, and that's not always going to be 100%, but you can increase the chances that you're going to get a branch that goes out by where you cut. When you're making a bigger cut, you want to think about how closely to the collar you're cutting. If you cut right up against the rim of the tree, you're going to cut through all this, which actually makes a larger cut and also damages this more sensitive meristem tissue around the collar. Makes it harder for it to heal. Another fun trick that I wouldn't do except on large cuts is you can go back around and you can bevel the edge here. If you see, I kind of use my knife to just go around and soften the edge of this cut. So then the tree is growing back, instead of over a right angle, it's growing up in a curve over that wound, and that'll allow it to heal more quickly and get on to the business of producing more growth in the rest of the tree and fruit and doing all the things it needs to do. I would say, in terms of when you're done, when you finish, I was looking to try and keep things roughly equidistant to each other. This is still a little high on this side, but I felt like I was taking a lot off already. But I was paying attention to not have two that ended up at the same level. So instead of having those two be be sort of like right there next to each other. I had one higher than the other. that one's a little higher than the other one. If they're the same height, then they're both going to sprout from that, and it's going to look super awkward. So you want to have like a branch that comes off one side and then maybe a foot down from that, one that goes the other way. So we're trying to occupy all the space, but we're trying to do it in a sort of a shaped and organic way, as opposed to a blocky, tiered system. And then, yeah, I think you can probably tell it just feels like the tree can breathe more. And we'll all have different opinions about what that means. And sometimes it's harder to imagine all the leaves out on it. But I always get the sense of like, it's there. It's got some room to grow, to breathe, got some space. It's like when you cancel plans, right? You do commitment pruning in your own life. It allows for new things to grow. So I think you'll start to develop that intuition. And I also think that spending some time away from the tree for a little bit and then coming back, if you're able to, just like an hour or two or a day, and then come back and say like, oh, did I cut too much, or maybe there's more I could do. If you can do it halfway through, that's great, because it'll keep you from just chopping everything down and going too far sometimes. That can be, we've all had the thing where you're drawing something like, I'll add a little bit here, I'll add a little bit here, and I ruined it. That can definitely happen in pruning as well. I wouldn't say this tree is like exactly where I'd want it to be forever in terms of all the cuts, but I feel a lot better about it in terms of the space of where everything's got to grow this year, to leaf out in both structurally and for fruit production. So I got 2 apples off of this tree last year, and I've been staring at it since I moved into this house in late May, wanting to prune it, and now's the time, and I'm hoping that it'll really help it flourish this year. Please feel free to respond with comments and questions, and I'm happy to make another video responding to a few of the questions if there are some, and point out specific things about this tree. We can also talk about differences between tree species, apple, pear, plum, peach, those kinds of things. But for now, it's breathing easy.